Time and time again, I read or I hear this particular phrase and it has a tendency to rub me up the wrong way. It's called the justice system. At its most basic level, this is a total misnomer of what it is we work within, the confines, the parameters that lawyers actually work within. We do not have a justice system. We have a legal system. And the two are very, very different, and they must be inevitably different. And if this was a different topic and we were talking about matters concerning life, the universe, and everything, we might have the possibility of talking about justice. But for now, can we please, for the love of everything, at least eliminate this phrase from our modern use? Why do we not have a justice system? I think it comes in a few different ways. And we also need to be guarded, as I talk about here, that we don't use these as excuses to become cynical. But at its best, we have a legal system. It sets up a framework that we can function in. The first reason we don't have a justice system is nobody can actually agree on what justice is. That in itself is fundamentally going to be difficult. Let's take a very recent example, just been happening over the last few months as I record this. And this is a barrister who decided to become an informant for the police against her own clients. Now, I don't know what you think, but if you are a law student or if you are a lawyer, that's going to send off a few alarm bells inevitably, because you're not really supposed to divulge information your own clients are giving you to the police. You're certainly not supposed to become a police informant against your own clients. That's a big problem. But the question is, what is justice in these circumstances? And I don't mean justice as against the lawyer or necessarily justice concerning the police who were involved in that decision, but justice concerning the people for whom that lawyer was acting. Is justice that they should be largely unable to be tried and therefore set free, or otherwise not dealt with in accordance with the usual processes? Is that justice? Is that because the integrity of the system is fundamentally more important than the individual case? Many people would say yes, and many other people would say no, and this just serves to highlight my point. Having that discussion, I suspect you're going to have a range of particular views about it. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I don't actually know what's going to happen, and I haven't kept up with that side of the news. But what is important is that in this particular circumstance, I suspect what justice is going to be a diversity of opinion. We also see it when we see comment, often in the media or by uninformed people, but comment nonetheless about particular sanctions or punishments that are given to people. Are sentences just or not? Some people believe that there are certain types of crime that should attract significantly greater penalties. Common example might be inflicting savage damage upon animals. There is no case that comes to mind that the actual maximum penalty has ever been granted for that particular crime, and yet some absolutely horrific stuff has occurred. Is that justice or is it not? Again, some people would say yes, some people would say no. So we don't have a justice system because nobody can actually articulate what justice is. That's my first point. My second point is that despite the attempts of various parties around the place to try and make justice, and see, I use the word there, accessible for people, wealthy people have a tendency to avail themselves of legal services more than not wealthy people. This means that if I'm in a commercial dispute with you and I've got $1,000 to spend on lawyers and you have $100,000 to spend on lawyers, almost inevitably I will be crushed under the weight of attrition that your lawyers will be able to leverage against me and my lawyers. Is that just? Is that justice? Our system not only permits that, it largely encourages it. I can't say that that's necessarily justice. It has nothing to do with the merits of the actual case. So, what is justice in those circumstances? How do we level that playing field, or do we have to level that playing field? Again, nobody is really going to agree, especially in a capitalist society, on what the answer to that question is. But what I can say is that the systems that wealthy people use to cause litigation-style carnage are the same systems that allow people to be self-represented and to work their way through the system. And that sometimes drives other people crazy. That self-represented litigants are given so much opportunity to articulate their case, if indeed it is actually a case that exists. But maybe that is how that balances out, because it's the same tool. It's the underlying principle that the ventilation of a case properly, its articulation, and the process that litigation has been set up to involve is more important than someone's rights being summarily determined or someone being sanctioned heavily simply because they did the wrong thing or made a mistake in a commercial context. So, same tools, different outcomes. One gives access to the self-represented litigant, and the other is a tool commonly used by wealthy people to the detriment of their opponents. An example there might be applications. Just making applications willy-nilly. Strikeout applications of other sides' pleadings, applications for further disclosure that's unnecessary, applications for further embedded particulars, even just a barrage of long-winded correspondence that requires answer, because you're not supposed to let things go totally unanswered, even if you have no money and you don't really think that they have any possible merit. That is the style of litigation some people adopt. Is that just, or is it not? I don't have an answer to that, but I'm saying this is the legal system in which we work, and this is another reason why it is not a justice system. The final reason that I have, for today at least, because I like doing things in threes, is that ultimately justice as we know it, as determined by the legal system in which we function, is subject to human frailty. That is, we need to rely upon an individual or a group of individuals to make a decision. Now, sometimes that is by reference to the law, sometimes that is by reference to who is telling the truth or who is not telling the truth. And such decisions are not easy. Even just doing it day to day is not that easy. If my children are mucking up and I try and get to the bottom of how and when and who and what, that's actually not a very easy task, despite my legal training. They have a tendency not to play by the same rules as litigants in commercial litigation do, and so it is a difficult task. And so because the legal system is subject to that human element, it's going to inevitably involve a degree of error. Now, some people will say the answer to that is coming swiftly in the form of artificial intelligence, but I find that even more unlikely. We're going to end up in some sort of strange dystopian world where our rights and who is lying are determined by algorithms rather than by people. I'm not sure that's a better solution. Time will tell whether that is correct or not, but you get the point. Human frailty, lawyer error, judges making mistakes, our clients being poor witnesses on the stand and therefore having a finding of credit made against them, someone having faulty memory, someone ultimately failing to make a submission that they ought to have made, someone doing poor research in week 3 of a 16-year matter might ultimately result in the wrong, and I'm putting that in quotes, decision being made. So, there is not a justice system, and if we could please stop using the phrase, that would be excellent. What we have is a legal system. I did touch upon, though, I think an important caution that despite understanding and appreciating this, that we work within the confines and parameters and procedures of a particular system that is not necessarily always going to achieve justice between parties or in the world at large, we should not use that as an excuse to become cynical or to become devoid of human characteristics, somehow believing that as long as we go through the motions, we are applying ourselves properly and appropriately to a situation. This is the system in which we work, but that does not mean we as individuals need to lose our compassion and our ability to connect with people at that human level, even in matters like conveyancing, which might be the single largest purchase that a family is making. It's easy for us to think of this as humdrum or just another matter, but to them it's very important. Take that all the way to the other end of the spectrum, where someone's rest of their life quite literally is in your hands as their key lawyer, and we have a full raft of human emotion at play here. So do not use the fact that justice is not always obtained as a catalyst to reduce your ability to function as a human and as a lawyer. Yes, we work within a system. It is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it does allow you to serve your clients well, and it allows you to help them make good decisions and hopefully, more often than not at least, achieve an outcome that they at the very least can live with, or if not, then something that you can do your utmost to avoid. That is all I wanted to say today. Slightly different topic, a little bit less practical than sometimes I go on these, but I think it's an important discussion. And while it's tempting to be idealistic, that is not as helpful either, because we need to be sure that we're working within the system appropriately. That's all for today. Don't forget to subscribe, hit good buttons, and I will see you another time.